Hey pre-AP kids, we are starting today with our lesson 4-4. It's a course 2 lesson, one of our 7th grade lessons, and we are today multiplying and dividing rational numbers. So we are going to break this lesson up into 2 days. Today we're just going to focus on fractions. And then the next lesson, we will focus on decimals. So today, just looking at some fractions and some examples and things. This might take up 2 pages in your math journal, so just letting you know. First off, we're going to start here with our learning target. We have 2 learning targets. We are first going to multiply and divide fractions, and we also can't forget our integer rules. So we're going to apply those rules about same sign positive, different sign negative to our answers here. So our first step here with multiplying or dividing fractions is we are going to change our mixed numbers into improper fractions. Now, if you guys don't remember what that is, over here on the right side I have an example. It's our circle. It's where we take 3 times 4 and that gets us 12, and then we add the 1 on top, which gets us 13, and that's how we got the 13 over here. And then we always keep the same denominator, so that's why it's 13 over 3. So we're going to do that with our mixed numbers. Then our second step here is we are going to simplify before we multiply. That we did a while ago, but I know you'll remember. It was where we circled across from each other like a butterfly kind of and simplified doing the butterfly. So I'll show you an example here. Let me zoom it in so I have space to write. So an example here of our simplify before we multiply is if we had the number 2/5 times 15 over 4. So we did this, remember, by looking at the numbers like an X. So the 5 and the 15, I look at those together, and the 2 and the 4. And I say, how can I simplify these numbers? What common factors can I divide them both by? And so with my 2 and my 4, I know that I can divide those both by 2 because 2 goes into 2 and 2 goes into 4. So I'm going to simplify. I rewrite this, so this 2 divided by 2 is 1, 4 divided by 2 is 2. Then with my 5 and my 15, I know that I can divide those both by 5 because 5 goes into 5 and 5 goes into 15. Then my new number here, 5 divided by 5 is 1. 15 divided by 5 is 3. So now I have 1 over 1 times 3 over 2 instead of those really big numbers. So I'm going to rewrite it over here. 1 over 1 times 3 over 2. And then remember, we just multiply straight across. So this would become 3 over 2. And of course, at the end, we can't have that as a final answer because it's a improper fraction. But for right now, I'm not going to show that. I'm just showing you the simplify before we multiply. So now let me zoom back out here so you can see our next thing here. Now with division, so that one was a multiplication. Right here, we were looking at multiplying. Now we're looking at a division example. So again, our first step is we're going to change our mixed numbers to improper. But now, remember with division, we did that thing keep, change, flip, because we have to flip and use the opposite of our last fraction. The reciprocal, we called it. So here's an example of division. Let me zoom back in so I can fit it on this little strip. Okay, so a division problem that we might have here could be 3/4 divided by 1/2. And remember, underneath all of these is where we label and we say, okay, I'm actually going to rewrite this whole thing using keep, change, flip. I'm not going to do it right here. I'm not going to smoosh it all on top. So now I rewrite it. I keep the first fraction the same, change my division sign to a multiplication sign, and I flip my second fraction so it becomes the reciprocal of 1/2, which is 2 over 1. And then I could, from there, simplify and multiply. So I'm going to zoom out because I think I have that step down here. Yep. So now that I have 3/4 times 2 over 1, you'll see I can simplify that, right? Because my 2 and my 4 right here, I can divide them both by 2. And that's what I did right here. That's why it changed to 3 over 2 times 1 over 1, because I simplified that down. Then when I multiplied straight across, my final answer, I got 3 over 2, just like I did up above with my multiplication one, except I also showed you how we have to do cowboy and the horse. If I end up with an answer like 3 over 2, that can't be my final answer because it's improper. So I put the cowboy inside the den, my horse stays outside. 2 goes into 3 one time. 1 times 2 is 2. And when we subtract, we have 1 left over. Remember how we do that is we take the 1 all the way up to the top of the fraction, and then my 2 that was on the outside is the bottom. So that becomes 1 and 1/2 would be our final answer. And then the very last thing I wanted to remind you of, we've done all that so far, but now our last thing is our integer rules. Same sign. So if your two numbers that you're starting with before when you multiply or divide, if they are both positive or if they are both negative, your answer is going to end up being positive. But if one is positive and one is negative, then our answer ends up being negative. So let's go over to the next page and I will quickly do 1 or 2 more examples where I show you that whole positive, negative integer rules with our multiplying and dividing. So let's do one more page. Okay, on this page, let's do this. We'll set it up with some examples. Okay, our first one that we are going to do here, let's do negative 11 over 12 times 4 over 7. Okay, with this one, the very first thing that we're looking at here is we don't have any mixed numbers, so we don't have to change them into improper fractions. We can just do our multiplying straight across. But before I multiply, I don't want to use these big, huge numbers. So if I see that when I look at it like an X here, my 12 and my 4, I can simplify those down, then I'm going to go ahead and do that because I see that I can divide this by 4 and I can divide 12 by 4. And so my new number down here is going to be a 3, and my new number up here is going to be a 1. So I really have 11 over 3 times 1 over 7. Now, remember that this 11 and 7 right here, those aren't going to simplify down at all. That's okay. If they can't simplify, do the one side that can simplify and just leave the 11 and the 7 the same. Now I multiply straight across here, and I have 11 times 1 is 11, 3 times 7 is 21. Then I look back at my original numbers. Same sign positive, different sign negative. I had 1 negative and 1 positive. So since they had a different sign, I have to make this a negative 11 over 21. It's not an improper fraction, so this can be my final answer. I don't have to do cowboy and the horse or anything like that. Okay, let's do one more. I'm going to have us do a division one. So our division example here, let's do 5 and 3/4 divided by a negative, I'm going to make that one negative 2, a negative 3 and 2/3. So they're both negative, and they're both mixed numbers to start with. So now my very first thing that I'm going to do is let's do our circle on both of these numbers and turn them into improper fractions. So 4 times 5 is 20, plus 3 is 23, so this ends up being 23 over 4, divided by my next one, 3 times 3 is 9, plus 2 is 11, that becomes 11 over 3. Now I have to do my keep, change, flip, because it's still a division problem. So I'm going to rewrite it down here as 23 over 4 times 3 over 11 is the reciprocal of 11 over 3, so I flipped it. Now, sorry, that's 3 and this 23 doesn't look very good. I'm going to look at them to see if I can simplify them at all, because these are kind of big numbers, but I'm looking and I say, okay, 11, 22, so 11's not going to go into 23. I can't simplify those. And 3 and 4, those aren't going to simplify either. So even though these are big numbers, and I tried to look across like this and see if I can simplify, they aren't going to simplify, and that's okay. So I am just going to have to multiply straight across, skip that simplify step. So 23 times 3, let's see, 20, 40, 60, 69 over 4 times 11 is 44. Now my top number is bigger than my bottom number. That's our improper fraction. So we need to do cowboy and the horse to turn this back into a mixed number. So let me see here, give myself some space. So cowboy goes in, horse stays outside. 44 is only going to go into 69 one time. 1 times 44 is 44. I subtract. I got 5, 2, 25. Now, 44 is not going to go into 25, so this is my remainder, all right? So my remainder is going to go up and be the top of my fraction, so it's 25 over 44. Yikes, that 4 doesn't look very good. There we go. So 1 and 25 over 44. I have to ask myself a couple of things. First off, can I simplify this? I'm thinking through my odd numbers. They're both not even, so I can't divide them by 2. So right now I have this number, 1 and 25 over 44. I'm not seeing any way that I can simplify, so my last thing that I have to look at is I need to look back at my original problem. Same sign positive, different sign negative. They were both negatives back up here. Remember, we had this negative sign, if it'll let me draw, and this negative sign. So my answer has to be positive. So my final answer is 1 and 25 over 44. You guys can do this. You've done all these steps before. We just are combining a couple of steps. So make sure you have all these examples and you will be ready to roll so that you don't have any homework in class tomorrow, hopefully. So great job. Have a wonderful night and we will see you guys soon.